I'm Helen Drummond, Houston Audubon's Executive Director, and welcome to the Edith L. Moore Nature Sanctuary, home to our historic log cabin. Many of us were just gathered here in January to celebrate the cabin's grand reopening after being closed for many years to preserve its structural integrity and historic value. Repairs made possible by Terry Hershey's gift, donated in honor of her late husband's death. What a special place the cabin is for children and to our community. And how fitting it is that we are gathered here again to commemorate and celebrate the works and contributions of Terry, a true champion of conservation. Thank you all for coming, in spite of the rain. It actually stopped just in time to really have a great time. So I'm glad all of you are here to share in this very special occasion as we introduce the Texas Women in Conservation Award in honor of Terry. We are thrilled to team up with Audubon Texas in this endeavor. Terry is very special to Houston Audubon. She was a founding director, longtime board member, and is currently a member of our esteemed board of advisors. As a supporter for Houston Audubon since its inception in 1961, Terry's contributions over the years have been invaluable, including the most recent donation to restore the cabin. She is a treasured gem around here. With every turn, there is an inspiring story about Terry. Stories of her impact to lives, communities, and organizations around here and across the country and the state. For example, most recently, Terry's commitment to contribute to the acquisition of Deer Park Prairie spurred hundreds to give to help acquire land that would place a very rare special prairie in Harris County under conservation protection. Ms. Hershey's lead gift stimulated an unprecedented rally of support that resulted in $4 million being raised in a short period of time, a very short period in the conservation world. And now, the prairie is being saved. In fact, many in this room were inspired and gave during that rally of support. Brian Trusty. Yes. Brian Trusty of Audubon, Texas. Thank you for your leadership in bringing to Texas a very special award program that duly recognizes women's contributions to natural resource conservation and honors our very dear friend, Terry Hershey. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you, Helen. My name is Brian Trusty, and I'm with Audubon Texas, and I'd like to reiterate my thanks for everyone being here today. This is an impressive group of people, and we have some really important folks we also like to recognize that are here joining us today. And so I'll start with Isabel Longoria. She's here representing the Senator Sylvia Garcia's office. Thank you for being here. We have Christina Hartman here representing Al Franco Lee, from County Commissioner from Precinct 1. Thank you for being here. We also, of course, have the esteemed Carter Smith, the Executive Director of Texas Parks and Wildlife Department. And thank you for being here as well. And then, of course, we have Ben Hulsey, the President of the Houston Audubon Board, and a nice showing of the Houston Audubon Board. So thank you all for everything that you do. We have Judy Boyce with the Terry Hershey Foundation, and then, of course, Andy Sansom with the board of the Hershey Foundation and with Audubon Texas' board. So thanks to all of you for being here today and taking time out of your very busy schedules. I would be remiss if I didn't recognize the hard work of all the staff that went in to make this thing possible in a very short timeline. And so I would like to acknowledge Helen's staff, Jessica Jubino, making things happen here locally. And of course, we couldn't do anything without the folks from Audubon Texas team, Jennifer Pearson, our Director of Development, Ben Hulsey, Marketing Manager, Natalie Ray, our Development Manager, and of course we have Amanda Hackney, our Coastal Program Manager. So thank you all for everything you do. like to take a few moments to just introduce the concept of this award. So our great conservation really involves learning from the past, making a difference in the present, and instilling a sense of responsibility in the future. It's an intricate mosaic made up of each of us as individual threads woven together that makes a beautiful tapestry that is our conservation vision. There has been no previous time in history when the outcomes from meaningful conservation and leadership are so desperately needed as they are today. Audubon has a great legacy in Texas, as this is our 114th year of being a conservation leader. Our first Texas chapter was established in 1899, right down the road from here in Galveston, making Audubon the oldest citizen conservation organization in the Lone Star State. Much of our success has been led by extraordinary women. Over the last century, we've learned something at Audubon. The focus of great conservation is not the landscapes and wildlife that we strive to protect. These are the beneficiaries. The focus of great conservation is people. Today, there are over 26 million residents in Texas, and that's expected to double in the next 40 years, creating great need to foster awareness and involvement amongst our fellow Texans. We're blessed to have come a long way, and we still have a long way to go, as new threats emerge as quickly as old ones are overcome. Today, Audubon is pleased to announce the Terry Hershey Texas Women in Conservation Awards program. This is a program that celebrates and honors the significant contributions of women in conservation here in Texas, and incentivizes and supports conservation leadership opportunities for women in the future. The inaugural honorees will be recognized at a luncheon here in Houston in February of 2015. And starting then, we will annually honor the accomplishments of women conservationists as philanthropists, as professionals, and as pioneers. The funds raised in this program will support current and future women leaders in conservation in Audubon and in other organizations throughout the state. We are proud to partner with our state's largest Audubon chapter, Houston Audubon Society, on this remarkable event. And I will tell you, this is a national model for Audubon. And no other place nationally has a state office partnered with a local chapter on an event of this magnitude. So we're very happy to brave new world with you here. So together we will make great things happen. And proceeds from this program will be shared by Audubon Texas, Houston Audubon, as well as other organizations that apply for grant funding to support programs and opportunities for women and girls in the field of conservation. This last year's outdoor industry participation study completed by the Outdoor Industry Foundation found that participation by girls in outdoor and nature experiences has steadily declined to the lowest point in 25 years as a proportion of the total population. This is our call to action. And so right now it is my pleasure to introduce to you Andy Sansom, who's the Executive Director of the Meadows Institute for Water and the Environment. He was 12 years in the leadership position as Executive Director of Texas Parks and Wildlife Department. Andy has served on the National Board of the National Audubon Society, currently serves on the State Board of Audubon Texas, and it is my extreme pleasure to introduce Andy today. Andy?
Thank you all very much. I can't really think of a day in recent memory when I feel more blessed or privileged. I'm blessed because it's raining. And because I have the wonderful privilege of being here with a person who is one of the most important and treasured people in my life and has been for a long time, Terry Hershey. It's a privilege because in our movement we tend to think of our founders as people like John Muir and Theodore Roosevelt. But if you really look at the history of the environmental movement in this country, it was basically grounded by females. I know that everyone in this room knows that wildlife conservation in many respects began when women became concerned that the plumage that they wore in their hats was destroying tropical birds. And so they stopped the plume trade and formed the first Audubon chapters all over the country. Probably of less familiarity to you is that when Texas began to, along with many other states, put together the idea of creating a state park system. The people who made it happen were an organization which still exists today called the Texas Good Roads and Transportation Association, because they partnered with the governor to create destinations for people to drive these newfangled machines to. And women who in Texas got the vote 2 years ahead of women in any other state. They were newly enfranchised, they were ready to get involved and make a difference politically, and their first issue was the creation of the Texas State Park System. So along with the highway contractors and the governor of the state, the Federation of Women's Clubs, garden clubs, women all over Texas made it possible for us to have a state park system. When I came back to live in Texas in the 1970s, I lived in Washington, D.C., and I had become acquainted with a gentleman whose name was Bob Kahn. Bob Kahn was a famous environmental writer for the Christian Science Monitor, who had been appointed by President Nixon to the first Council on Environmental Quality. And Mr. Kahn told me, he said that when you get back to Texas, there's two people that you need to find as soon as you get there. One is a gentleman named Perry Bass, and the other is Terry Hershey. Well, I'm not very smart, and so I really didn't do that right away. But I was cleaning out some files about a year ago, and I found a little yellow piece of lined tablet paper. And it said, "Mr. Sansom, I like what you're saying. I want you to come see me." And it was from Terry Hershey. I still have it, and it was written to me in about 1976. There really is no person of either gender who has had such an impact on our movement in this state and really across the country. Terry and I recently attended a banquet here that honored conservationists who have been involved in the Parks and Recreation movement. And Terry served on the board of the National Recreation Park Association, was one of their most revered trustees. And they met in Houston and honored her at their annual banquet. So, Terry, thanks for all you've done, and your works will inspire not only women, but the rest of us for many years to come because of this wonderful program. Now I'm going to show my age because I'm going to introduce you to my intern. I first met Carter Smith when he was a student at Texas Tech. And it's indescribable of me to express to you how proud I am of him. I guess I could have guessed at that time that he would have one day followed me as the executive director of Texas Parks and Wildlife. But what I couldn't have guessed was how much more difficult the job was when he arrived and when I got there. And he's had to handle things that I never had to address when I had that wonderful privilege. And he's doing a spectacular job in a very difficult time. And we owe him an extreme debt of gratitude. And we're privileged to have him here today. Carter Smith.
Thank you, Andy, for that very kind and generous introduction, and Helen and Brian and Ben and everyone. God, what a privilege it is to be here among all of you. It's like old home week, I have to tell you, in terms of seeing friends. And as Andy was saying that, I was reflecting on a couple of things. One, I think I have spent my entire adult life following Andy Sansom around. First in the Helen halls of Texas Tech, and then at the Parks and Wildlife Department and the Nature Conservancy, and now at Parks and Wildlife, and then I get to follow him here again today, which is always a hard act to follow, but God bless him. He's laid the big trail, and he's made it a lot easier for all of us that are following his way. Thank you. The other thing, Helen, Brian, I'm just going to thank you. It's, I'm asked to give a fair amount of talks in this position, but my goodness, the opportunity to talk about Texas women, what a layup. And then even given more wonderfully the opportunity to talk about Terry Hershey. And so I've been looking forward to this for a long time. And so what a great occasion to be here. And as I look out across many of these ladies that I know here in the audience, I'm reminded of two of the wonderful traits of Texas women, and that's both grace and grit. And rest assured, Terry Hershey has an abundance of both. She also has an abundance of beauty and brains, and by the way, brawn. And I think everybody in this room know that she has dedicated all of those attributes, thankfully, to doing things that every one of us in this room care passionately about. Because she's made, you know, the nature of her business is nature. Protecting our birds and our bayous, our parks and our prairies, our rivers and our streams, our wild things and our wild places. She's been aptly described by just about everybody as a force of nature. And one could hardly find a better characterization of Terry Hershey than a force of nature. Brian and Helen asked if I'd share a few words about Terry's conservation accomplishments. And I will bet you dollars to donuts that Terry Hershey does not have a resume. But and if she did, it'd be on one of those proverbial yellow line piece of paper with straws that you want to save in eternity. But if she did, it would probably rival War and Peace in length and in depth, because there is nothing that this lady hasn't tackled. We've all grown up with the extraordinary story back in the 60s when, you know, she enlisted Houston's two most famous is George. George is to help her save Buffalo Bight, and watched as she really started to transform how the state thinks about how we move water, how we take care of our urban streams, how we protect care of these places that are right here in our backyard. And I'm sure there were a million lessons that Ms. Hershey learned in that very, very contentious battle to do what's right that I think everybody recognizes today for Houston. But certainly one of those was that if she was going to be successful with respect to conserving the things we love here in all of your home ground and our home ground, that it also had to be sustainable. And so with many people in this room, we can just point to the extraordinary organizations that she helped found, Houston Audubon being at the top of that list. Bayou Preservation Association, Bayou Land Conservancy, Katy Prairie Conservancy, Tree People, Park People, Urban Harvest, the Citizens Environmental Coalition right here in Houston. And so every single organization that cares about our lands and waters and fish and wildlife and parks, you can see Ms. Hershey's footprints and fingerprints all over. But the other lesson that she has taught us so well is just like her beloved praise, just like her beloved nature, she also knows no boundaries. And so, thankfully, all of that brain and brawn and beauty and grace and grit was not simply restricted to the Houston area. She applied that across the state and across the country. The work she did supporting organizations from the Trust for Public Land and helping shepherd them into a modern land conservation outfit across the country. Audubon, National Audubon, the Nature Conservancy. As Andy said, she was appointed to the Texas Parks and Wildlife Commission by Governor Ann Richards, where she was a very, very, very principled advocate for your state park system. She was also a very principled advocate for your private lands in this state. And Terry, more than anyone, helped shepherd in conservation easements in our state. At the time, if you knew what a conservation easement was at that time, if you said it, you were likely to get gunshot by somebody. And Terry pulled together a group of, Andy, 300 people to come to that first conference. And think about those times in the 90s and where we are today now, Jennifer, with 40 land trusts across the state and literally millions and millions of acres that have been conserved as a function of that tool in those local community-based organizations. It's just simply extraordinary to think about her fingerprints on the state. I love the fact that when Jennifer Lorenz raised the call for help, that Terry Hershey was the first in line. And nobody in this room was surprised about that because she's always been a pioneer. She's always been at the vanguard of what we need to conserve. And she's always put her money and the resources where her mouth is and helped lead the way. Like Andy, I too have a Terry Hershey story, and I wanted to share it with you. So I moved back to Katy from the boreal forest in northern Saskatchewan, about 6 hours north of Saskatoon. And so if you wanted a place that was as far away from Houston and the Katy Prairie, you were at the Cree Indian Reservation where I lived in northern Saskatchewan. And I moved back to this area to take a job as executive director of the Katy Prairie Conservancy. And oh God, wow, what a fancy title, executive director. And I landed Helen in Houston and Katy and found out that the Katy Prairie Conservancy had no office, no land, and no money. And that fit the description, Joy, of just about every conservation organization in Houston, didn't it? And as Andy so aptly said, one of the first bits of advice you get if you're in the conservation community is that all roads lead to Terry Hershey. And so I found myself in her living room, and just young and bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and found myself in this amazing coterie of people that were doing extraordinary things in this community, and it was such a great source of inspiration. And anytime we would get in the proverbial ditch out there on the Katy Prairie, you know, we'd inevitably come to see Terry to get her advice. And I'll never forget, because she'd always, when you're talking with her, she's always looking down at you with those reading glasses that were kind of about half perched down at the nose. And so, and the other thing about Terry, as all of you know, you never had to chase a rabbit through the brush with Terry. She told you what she liked, and she told you what she didn't like. But you always left those meetings and those conversations all the richer. Wonderful counsel. She'd always make sure that those of us in the trenches always had a little walking around money to try to do some good. She'd just imbue us with her laughter, which was so rich and just would fill up a room. And she'd always admonish us in her own inimitable way to get back in there in the game of life and go out and do good things for the prairie or the parks or the forest or whatever the cause. And I'm eternally grateful to you, Ms. Hershey, for that. You have set the bar so high in our state. And on behalf of all of your friends in your Texas Parks and Wildlife Department, God bless you. Thank you for being the voice of the prairie, the forest, the parks, and the bayous. Thank you, Ms. Hershey.
So, as we mentioned, today is, we're very excited about, very honored that today we have the opportunity to announce this great program. We're also thrilled to death that Terry has allowed us to name this program after her legacy. And as a great example of this high standard of excellence that you've really set for all of us as Texans, and certainly a great example for current and future women leaders in the world of conservation here in the Lone Star State. So thank you for having us. Thank you for allowing us to name this program after you and for everything that you do. So I think we're approaching the end of our program today. We promised to keep it efficient and on time. So again, as kind of offering some comments as we close today, it's my privilege to introduce Ben Hulsey, the president of the board of the Houston Audubon Society.
Thank you, Brian, and I'd like to add my welcome to everybody that's here and appreciate your coming to help us honor Terry Hershey and to announce the Terry Hershey Women Conservation Award. We're very proud to partner with Audubon Texas in this event for a number of reasons. First, although we like to do a lot of things on our own at Houston Audubon, sometimes we found it's more effective when you find a good partner. And we couldn't have found a more appropriate partner than Audubon Texas. Second, I'll use Carter's term a layup here. Couldn't have found a more appropriate endeavor for Houston Audubon than supporting an event that honors women in conservation. The list of women that have been involved in the growth of Houston Audubon is a long one. And like most lists like that in this part of Texas, it starts with Terry Hershey. And we're proud to have her as a person that was involved from the very beginning, as Helen and everyone else has documented. And I'm sure that you've already heard enough to believe, including her contributions to this beautiful cabin, to believe that Terry Hershey is a woman who's made a difference in conservation. And we wouldn't be here today if 40 years ago, a woman named Edith L. Moore, who loved nature and wanted to share it with others, had not decided to donate this cabin and the surrounding land to Houston Audubon. So again, I would say Edith L. Moore is a woman who made a difference in conservation very clearly. There are countless other women who have been an important part of our growth, including many of our volunteer force of over 500. In fact, every year we give the Laura Singleton Volunteer Award in honor of a woman who for her decades of volunteer service has been called the consummate volunteer in Audubon's Army. Well, what a way to be remembered, and what a difference Laura Singleton made for conservation. Finally, I can vouch for the effectiveness of women in conservation from personal experience. Like most of you, I'm asked from time to time, how did you get interested in birds or native plants or water conservation or whatever your passion is? And the answer for me to that question is a woman named Ellen Redd, and who was a past member of the board here and volunteer, a mega volunteer, who took me with a group of people from our church years ago to High Island, where I experienced the miracle of migration for the first time and was hooked. And for a long time, I thought I was unique in experiencing Helen's influence. And then I see people already know where this is going. Till I got involved with Houston Audubon, and I met person after person who answered that question with the same name, Ellen Redd. What a legacy, and what a way to be remembered, and what a difference she made in conservation. It's that type of dedication to conservation that we are celebrating and recognizing with this award, women who have made a difference. And the real beauty of this award is that not only are we recognizing women who are making a difference in conservation now, but we will be providing funding and programs that will help us support and create the Terry Hersheys, the Edith L. Moores, the Laura Singletons, the Ellen Redds of the future. That's why we're here today, and that's why we invite you to join us in supporting both this award and the programs for women and girls who are engaged in stewardship and conservation in the natural world that will help fund. So again, we're delighted that you're here. We hope that you will listen as word comes, additional word comes about our luncheon in the future, and I hope that you will tell all your friends. Thank you, and thank you for joining us.
Ben, that concludes our program for this morning. If there are members of the media that have questions for Helen or I, we're available afterwards. We have plenty of refreshments out back if you would like. Otherwise, please stay as long as you would like. I think Richard has offered to lead a humid hike. Otherwise, we can't thank you all enough for being here and for everything that you do for conservation, for Audubon, and for Texas. So, thank you.
See,